Hi everyone, I'm Jason Khalipa and welcome to the AMRAP Mentality Podcast, a show we interview interesting people about how they make the most out of every single minute. On today's episode, we have Lewis Howes. I've been inspired by Lewis for a long time, specifically how he went from his sister's couch to Ellen's couch, how he went from no following to a giant following in the New York Times bestseller. But most importantly, what I was inspired by today is at the end of the conversation how he really summarized that Lewis is motivated, inspired to make an impact on every single person's life. And I hope you take as much out of this episode as I did. Have a great day. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the AMRAP Mentality Podcast. I have a very special guest today. A couple of years ago, I came and was on a podcast with Lewis Howes in LA. And I hit him up the other day. I was like, look, man, I'd really love to have you on our podcast. I think you have a lot of insight. I think you have a lot of value to add. Would you be interested? And he's like, absolutely. I was like, perfect. I wasn't expecting that answer, but dude, I really appreciate you taking the time today. And
of course, man.
Yeah, dude. So we're down here in LA, coming to talk to Lewis, talk a little bit about greatness, several different subjects. The way I like to break these things down is to do like a little AMRAP, try and get as much information as we can, about 40 minutes, give or take. So I'm going to start a clock and we'll go ahead and dive in.
AMRAP. Is there a 40-minute AMRAP usually? It's usually like
It's like
10,
normally like a 20-minute AMRAP.
Yeah. I'm like,
all right, here we go in 3, 2, 1. So, your podcast has basically just grown exponentially over the years. And over the years, I've watched you personally grow from, kind of getting introduced to who you are to all of a sudden now you're on Ellen, you're on Good Morning America. You just hosted a giant event, Summit of Greatness,
yep.
Right? And you had 1,500 people there and Wyclef playing. And so what I'm curious about is you always ask everybody at the end of your podcast, like, what is greatness? And I want to kind of pinpoint that in specific areas. Like for me, I think about my life in terms of business, fitness, family, and I want to try and be good at all those things and excel. And so like for you, when it comes to greatness, whether that be like reaching your full potential, right? It's kind of like what I think about. Where does that fall for you in greatness in terms of your relationships, personal relationship with Jen? I want to start there because business is it's evident you're killing the game if anybody follows you. But for those of you who don't know, like how is your relationship with your girlfriend? How did you guys meet? And how do you balance her having her own business, being an entrepreneur, and you as well?
Yeah. Well, Jen's amazing. She's just an inspiring individual that's grows year after year since we've been together. And she has grown from being, a doctor of physical therapy, working at a clinic, to doing one-on-one with people and leaving the clinic and doing her own thing, to then doing the online stuff, which she's really thrived at, is creating her own program so she can reach more people, to now speaking on stages with 1,000 people in the audience. So she's really grown and she's constantly developing herself, which is fun for me to watch. And it's one of the reasons why we work.
Yeah, well, and so are you, right?
Because I'm growing and she's growing. And we talk about this, it's like if either of us are not growing, we're going to be disconnected. And I think with the amount of growth we both have, there's still challenges and struggles. And, we talk about that as well. So sometimes are incredible and other times they're more challenging.
And so what do you guys do in your relationship to is there a singular thing that you guys try and reinforce? Hey, every week we're going to take a date night, because I imagine like we were just talking about, you travel all the time, you're doing all these different things, you've released, different books, you have your podcast. Yeah. Is there something like that's kind of like on the books, like, hey, once a week, let's try and do X to to basically date again?
I think it's every night that we connect every night and talk about what we're grateful for. I think perspective and attitude is powerful for any relationship. And we could be negative about the things we're ungrateful for in our day, whether it be between us or in our own personal lives, or we could find things to be appreciating in our own personal life. And so every night we talk about what we're grateful for with each other personally.
So every night, whether you're in New York, well, you're with her, but whether you're in,
if I'm alone or not,
whether you're alone or not, you sit down, maybe over a meal, whatever, and you just say, hey, what are we grateful for today? Is it big picture or is it micro?
It's that day.
It's that day.
It's that day. 3 things we're grateful for. Each of us share that every night. And I think that brings us back to perspective. No matter how frustrated we might have been that day, either personally in our own stuff or about each other. If we're going through something, we reflect on, okay, well, this was a tough day, or maybe it was a great day, but what are we grateful for?
Huh.
And that brings us back to like just a place of understanding about, listen, there's maybe stuff happening in our lives or between us personally, but there's a lot of good. And I think that perspective brings us back to a place of like groundedness that allows us to feel good and peaceful when we fall asleep.
That's really cool. I mean, I think, I've talked to you about this a little bit. When my daughter was diagnosed, I told myself I never want to forget the struggles we went through because it constantly is a reminder of perspective, right? Like, when you're in the hospital with someone who's really sick, 5 years later, you might forget some of those memories. But I think it's really important every day to have that perspective that there's a lot to be grateful for. And I think people, they just take a step back for a second, like what you're saying. You do it on a nightly basis, and that's something that I'm picking up just through this conversation. But I think for me, I try and reinforce on a regular basis with my wife and with our children that there's always something, if you look at it, like, looking at the world in like a darkness or a lightness, like you could choose how you want to,
Right.
you know what I mean? That's really cool.
Yes,
So,
we do that at night. I think we also do something in the morning. We make the bed together.
really?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
If you're home.
If we're home, most of the time we'll make it together. Maybe half the time one of us will make it on our own. Like if someone has to run out really quick, if the other person's still in bed, then they'll make it.
So does that go back to the Navy SEAL talk about like win the morning, win the day, start it off right? No matter what happens, you're going to do it.
I was doing this before this talk and this book came out.
It got really popular.
Got huge. And I was like, I've been doing this for a while.
So why do you make the bed? And why do you make the bed together?
I remember never making my bed growing up. And then I went to a boarding school and it was like required to. So I made my bed a lot there.
How old were you when you went to boarding school?
13.
Okay.
Until like 16. And then I got out of there and was like a day student at the school. And then like in college, I stopped doing it. And like in my 20s, I like stopped. And then I think it was later in my 20s, maybe 28, 29. I'm 35 now. I was just feeling like sloppy in my life. Like I was achieving things at a high level, but felt like undisciplined in other levels. So I started thinking like, what are some things I could do on a daily basis that would make me feel more prideful in myself and in my space? And I would just wake up and kind of like throw the covers off and, then I'd come back every night and I would just feel like, I gotta feel sloppy. It's not a clean space. It's a sloppy space.
Yeah. And
then I heard a monk. I was at an event where a monk was talking about the power of making your bed and how he makes it every morning and it builds a sense of pride and productivity and all these things in your day. And I was like, I'm just going to try this thing. I've been feeling like this sense of like sloppiness. Let me make the bed and see how this does for like 30 days.
And it made an impact.
And I did it. And I was just like, man, when I come back at night, it just felt like, well, one, it felt like good to complete something, even though I was like, I don't want to do this. It's like an extra minute or two.
Right.
But when I did, I'd look at it and be like, man, that looks clean. And then everything the rest of my day, I was like, I just wanted to look clean. I wanted to be nice. I wanted to like clean up after myself. I want to be organized, not just like a messy desk with stuff everywhere. It's like organized. And I think that habit has worked really well for me.
And then when you integrated that with her, so
she wasn't doing that. I don't think she was doing that before we met. Maybe she was, but she wasn't like a diligent thing.
Right. So two notes on that. One is, how did she react to that? And then also, when you're at hotels, do you make your own bed?
Not at the hotels.
Oh, okay.
No, not the hotel.
That's the exception to the rule.
But there are some times where I'm like, we were at a bed and breakfast like a couple weeks ago together, and I was like, kind of putting the sheets back. It wasn't like perfect, but it was like folding it back a little bit. I kind of let myself slide there. But yeah, here, if you go in my room, you'll see like a perfectly made bed with the pillows, everything perfect.
So when you integrated that in your relationship, obviously you'd been together for a little while when she moved in or you moved in or whoever it worked, right? Was it like just like a, hey, we're going to make the bed in the morning?
We were doing that before she moved in.
No big deal.
I mean, we were doing that like, when she'd stay over.
Right.
I was
just part of the routine.
It was a part of it. I would make the bed or I would say, hey, will you help me make the bed? I wasn't like demanding her to do it or anything. But it just became a part of like what we did. And I think, I've picked up certain habits that she does. And she's picked up certain habits that I do that are supportive of us individually and also together. For instance, I've never been drunk. I don't drink alcohol. And
you don't drink at all, or you just don't drink?
I've never been drunk.
You just don't drink to get drunk.
I've never.
So if you and I wanted to have a glass of wine together, you'd be okay, but you wouldn't drink 7.
I wouldn't drink at all.
Okay.
I would sit there and watch you drink, but I wouldn't have a sip.
Okay.
I've never been drunk in my life. And I've had sips, and maybe like twice a year I'll have like a Bailey's on ice,
Sure.
just to sip
Yeah,
on
a
it.
little, maybe
That's it.
holiday time.
That's it. But I've never had like a full beer or wine. I've had like a sip of wine, but
Now,
it's just not a thing for me.
now does that stem back to, well, I want you to finish what
Yeah.
you were talking about with her.
Yeah, yeah. So she used to, not get drunk or whatever, but she'd have wine or beer here and there. And the more she spent time with me and realized like, I didn't need that to enjoy my time. I saw her pulling away from drinking just kind of like mindlessly, and now she'll have wine every now and then or whatever with friends. And again, I'm not like making her wrong either way, but it's just a habit and a choice that I've made in my life. And I think she sees the value of not needing it all the time.
Yeah.
I think it was more of like a social crutch for her.
Yeah. Right.
Not trying to speak for her, but I think she's finding more joy in eating better foods and not needing that.
Yeah. You're becoming like each other's, you're making each other, elevating each other, right?
Exactly.
Together.
And
so,
she is always doing mobility, and I never did that.
oh yeah.
So now I'm finding myself stretching in the morning, stretching at night. She'll teach me a routine, and I'm like doing it before handball practice, and like, cause I used to get injured a lot, and now I'm not getting injured anymore because I do what she says. So I try to follow some of her habits. She follows mine, some of mine, and we do some together. And I think that's helped us thrive through struggles and challenges we've had, because it hasn't all been pretty,
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's kind of interesting models. Like, people ask me all the time, how do I get better as a CrossFit athlete or whatever it is? I'm like, well, surround yourself with others that are doing the same thing.
People, yeah.
And then you raise up, right? So if you want to get better at football, you're surrounded by these people and the work ethic kind of rolls off. Well, if you find a really good partner, you're going to find things that they're doing that you want to, you're inspired by, right?
Sure.
Like, for example, whatever, the drinking or the making the bed. And then it's just kind of like, is this idea where, like my wife and I talk about it all the time, is like, we're just trying to be a better version of ourselves every day. And it takes time, right? But the more we surround ourselves with good, positive people, the better off we're going to be. And so I want to backtrack a little bit. For anybody who follows you, they know that the story of you being on your sister's couch, right? I mean, it's pretty out there.
Yeah.
But what I'm curious about is, you were playing in the Arena League football.
Yep.
Got injured. Because of a bunch of events. I mean, I imagine at the time you weren't getting paid too much to be playing that.
$250 a week.
There you go.
Yeah,
all right.
Not much.
Yeah, not much.
Like a CrossFit athlete.
Yeah.
In the early days.
In the early days. And so you ended up, being on the couch. And then from there, you created these networking events, and it just sparked a bunch of stuff. So my question to you, and I asked you this before we even started this podcast, was like, is there something that when you take a step back, and I was using myself as an example, I'd have a bad event at the CrossFit Games, or maybe a business meeting didn't go as well as I wanted. And I'd reflect on it and be like, you know what? I didn't prepare enough. I didn't do this. So looking back on it, if you could relate to like you sitting on the couch, was there something that just stands out to you it was because of X, Y, and Z, your work ethic? I mean, because I imagine you worked hard. I imagine you did a lot of things right. But what led you to the path where you were at 25 and on the couch?
24 is when I got on there. 23, 24. Got off at 25. I got injured because I dove for a ball into the wall in playing arena football. So I got injured because I listened to a coach that I didn't trust, but I was living in fear because they were bringing guys in every week to like take your spot in Arena League. So there's like, there's only 4 or 5 receivers on the team. There's like, it's like 7-on-7 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's like 8-on-8 or whatever it is. And so they were bringing in like new receivers every week to practice with us for 3 days.
Really?
Before the next game. Every week.
No.
Same thing with linemen and quarterback.
No.
Oh, yeah.
See, once you're on the team, you weren't on the team.
You can get cut any day.
No.
Any day. And I'm playing for $250 a week.
What? All right.
And
so
food stamp. We literally had food stamps. So we would be trading like Chick-fil-A or like a barbecue food stamp or whatever it is with like other players of the stuff we didn't want.
Yeah.
McDonald's, like we get all these like food stamps from like whatever, the boosters or donors or whatever. And $250 a week, that's before taxes, right? Then we get tax on it. So it's like.
So you were balling basically.
Yeah, balling, man. And then we had a coach that wasn't, nice guy, but wasn't a good coach. Like, it doesn't care about cared about his position and like staying, you know,
Yeah.
being as a coach and trying to ranks. So they're just constantly saying, go all out, go all out. Like,
Yeah.
show us your effort, show us your effort.
Was it good that they had these guys come in? Like, and I want to get back
In
to
some ways, it's good because it's competitive. Because you're like,
but does it make you as an athlete almost feel like you can't? I mean, I know that's not good to ever get comfortable, and I want to talk about how you just climbed a mountain and how you're getting comfortable with uncomfortable. But like, is there a gray area there where it's like, maybe
I think it's
a
tough
little bit
because,
too much?
well, here's the thing. I broke my wrist in the second game of the season, and I knew that I had to play through it because otherwise it would cut me. So I was like, I'm not going to be able to live my dream. Like, I didn't even tell them that I broke it. I knew I broke it right away because I broke it in high school and I knew the feeling. And so when I got x-rays at the end of the season, the doctor was like, yeah, you should have gotten surgery when it happened, but you waited the last 4 months or whatever it was. It was 14 games or something.
Because you don't want to get cut.
Because I didn't want to get cut.
Yeah.
He was like, you waited, and now we can't even do like the normal surgery where you like put the screw in. We've got to take a bone out of your hip, and it's going to take a much longer time to recover. So it was 6 months in a cast as opposed to like 6 weeks.
Right.
It was a year and a half total of like rehabbing and stretching and just like trying to get my elbow to fully extend because it was in a cast. And so I reflect back, like I could have trusted my instincts more. And I knew I shouldn't have dove into this wall, but I was like, I need to show that I'm willing to sacrifice my body.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're going to stop playing me, or they're
Right.
not going to throw me the ball, or they're going to cut me. And I was in the mindset, I was just like, I'll do whatever it takes.
Right.
Because I cared so much. And so I paid a price by not trusting my instincts, and instead I was like trusting a coach that wasn't a credible figure. He was just like barely getting paid to like fill a role of like being a wide receiver coach, but he wasn't like this credible figure that had my best interest in mind.
That's what I was going to say. Did he have your best interest or just
I mean, maybe it was like fake best
Right.
interest, but it's like he's trying to like raise up in the ranks as a coach and like show his worth and be like, go all out, you know, whatever it is.
So if you could go back, right? Obviously, when you dove, it caused an injury. That set you back, right? Of course. And that eventually landed you on the couch.
Yeah.
But looking back on it, would you say that's actually what landed you on the couch? Or do you think it was a number of other things? And the reason why I bring this up is, you know, like if you take CrossFit, for example, there's some people that allow the games to define who they are, right? Like they don't want to get out of it because they're defined by their success.
That's their identity.
That's their identity, right?
Yeah.
So for you, was there anything else that you identified as, or were you literally football all in?
No, that was it, man. That was it. So
would you have had, if you could look back on it now,
would
you have set yourself up in different ways?
I don't think I would have.
No,
because I didn't have any other options. It's what I really loved and what I wanted to do. And that was my first season playing. So I was like, let me see what I can do and create here and see how far I can take this. I knew that I needed to play because I didn't want to regret not playing and being like, what if? What could I have done had I tried this? It's like, now if I tried to come back being like injured and with half an arm or whatever, then that would have been bad. Of like just kept playing, like kept in the CrossFit Games when I'm like last place and just like trying to hold on to something.
Right. So
me leaving was a very hard decision because I actually got a lot of offers to come play again after a year of recovery. I got a bunch of teams that wanted me to come play, but I was like, I don't want to play for $250 anymore. Like, am I really have a chance of making the NFL? Very slim. Like, I have to be a freak of nature. And I knew myself that I wasn't like athletically gifted the way some of these other guys with my speed. Like, I was a great football player, great vision, made plays, but I wasn't like a 4.3 40 guy.
Right.
It was like a 4.6 8. So it was like, I'm just not going to, I was aware of my skills.
Yeah.
That I wasn't going to it was so hard to say no to playing football.
That's what I was going to ask you. So you're sitting on the couch, you're getting these job opportunities, right? For lack of a better term. And you had to say no. And so, for any athlete out there or anybody for that matter, right? There comes a point in everybody's life, everybody, whether you're a Kobe, like you interviewed, right?
Yeah.
He had to make a really tough decision.
A reinvention. Yeah.
Yeah. Where he's sitting there, he's like, well, I mean, he has nothing to prove to anybody, right? Mm-hmm. But he has to be okay with himself saying, hey, I'm going to switch a gear. I'm going to refocus. I'm going to reprioritize. What for you as you're sitting there and you're shifting to something else? What was like the defining thing that like said, okay, I'm okay. I'm at peace with switching it up and starting this LinkedIn idea?
I don't think I was at peace.
No.
I wasn't at peace for a few years. And it was like really hard. Every football season, it was like hard for me because I
Huh.
was watching guys that I'd played against play in the NFL. I
Yeah.
was watching guys that I trained with.
So do you have any regrets from that decision?
I don't have any regrets, but it was hard for years because I was like, this could have been me. I felt like maybe it was a false sense of confidence, but I felt like I could be doing this.
Yeah.
But I reflect back now, 10 years later, and I'm like, I wouldn't be where I'm at, and I wouldn't be making the impact that I have. And maybe what I had played a year or two in the NFL, I could have gotten hurt. I could have broken my neck. Like something bad could have happened. Yeah. And I don't know if it would have been worth it. Like if something bad would have happened, it wouldn't have been worth it for me.
Isn't that funny the way life works? You get hit with these blows, right? Like you getting injured or whatever it may be. And at the moment, you can't understand it. And even 2 years, 3 years, when you really look back on it, you're like, man, that helped define what I'm doing today. And like back to what you were saying with the impact. So now, from a social media perspective, sure, you have millions of followers. You put out a book that hundreds of thousands of people have read. Mm-hmm. You're on talk shows, and you're able to make a big impact. Now, when you look at the impact you're trying to make over the years, right? I'm going to ask you this question. I was asking you earlier. Most people are going to say, "Hey, I don't feel like I've really achieved the biggest impact I can." I know that you're barely scratching the surface, and you know that, right? But to a lot of people, you've accomplished a lot of success. Yeah. Right? You've provided for your girlfriend. You've provided for yourself. You've created this sustainable income. And now what over the years from couch to Ellen or whatever you want to call it, right? What are some defining moments? Because I know you and I talked about that a little bit. So how did you know you were on the right track? Because I think there's some people out there who go out there and do like what you did. They start the hustle.
Yeah, early on I got some like decent success, like accomplishments, probably within 2 years.
2 years is a long time, though. I thought maybe if I do it for 2 months, I'm not going to see the results. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, you see, I saw like little wins. Like my first, after a year and a half on my sister's couch, I made like $6,200 from a webinar, and that was like I was the richest person in the world.
That was for the LinkedIn one, right?
$6,200 in like an hour training, and I was essentially broke before that. I was doing like these networking events, these LinkedIn networking events for almost a year, making maybe $1,000, $2,000 a month, like hustling.
So before we move on to the next step, how did you know at that point? So you're 1 year. Let's just say you're at month 10, and you're making $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
How did you stay committed to what you wanted to do? Because I imagine at that point you'd be making more money working at Starbucks, right?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah,
potentially.
Here's the thing. I went to go do I was on my sister's couch for a while, and after a year and a half, she was like, "You need to start paying rent."
Right.
Or you need to leave.
Yeah.
Because I didn't pay anything, right? And I was like, okay.
So did you pay her back now?
So I pay her back in lots of other ways, yeah. So I was like, okay, let me look on Craigslist for like job opportunities and see like what's out there.
Yeah.
But something inside of me was like, I don't want to do this. And I was making a few $100 a month at that time doing these events, and it was getting more and more, but it wasn't enough to live on. It was like paying my gas, whatever. And I found this one job that was like a sports marketing job in Columbus, Ohio, where I lived. And I was like, this actually looks like some things that I'd be good at and I'd like. I was a sports management major. Like I'm into sports, like all this stuff. So let me apply for this job, interview, and see if I can get like an interview. I get an email back. They're like, we'd love to have you come in. We'd love like your resume or your degree, whatever it was, your background. And here's the time for you to come for this interview. And I put like my one sport jacket that I have on, and I like get all dressed up in my khakis or whatever.
You're feeling good.
And I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
And I'm literally opening the door to go out of my sister's house and go to this interview. And I remember opening the door and looking out into the front street area where the car was. And I just couldn't step down the steps. I was just like stared out the doorway, and I was like, if I go and do this interview, I'm going to get this job. Again, I think I had like a false sense of confidence.
Sure. Yeah.
I was just like, there's no way they're not going to hire me.
Right.
Maybe I would have
you were wearing khakis in a sport coat.
Exactly.
How could you not?
Maybe I would have bombed completely or whatever, but I had so much confidence. I was just like, I'm going to enroll them into hiring me if I need to. Like I was a competitive like interviewer. I was like, they're going to want to hire me because of my passion and my willingness. I'll tell them whatever they need to hear type of mentality. And I think that scared me because I was like, okay, if I do that and I get the job, I'm going to be there a couple of years and I'm not going to go do the thing I really want to do. And I started to enjoy these like LinkedIn networking events that I was doing. I was like, I'm getting some value from just like meeting people, even though I'm broke still, Like I see something, I see a potential. And I said, I need to, and because I was enjoying it, I was like, okay, maybe I just need to go all in on this thing and like try it out. And if I didn't enjoy it, I probably wouldn't have went into the job interview.
Yeah.
But I had some joy around doing it. And then I said, okay, I really need to figure out how to make money because I had no clue. No one taught me how to make money. I was making $250 a week in football. I was a truck driver before that, making $250 a week as well, doing 6-hour trips a day. I was a bouncer on the weekends. Like I was not making anything. And I was like, I need to learn how to make money. And that's going to be the next thing I master. And so I just went down that path. I think that there was like a choice moment for me. Like my sister was like, you've got to leave. Here's how much time you have, or you need to start paying rent. And so it was time for me to leave. And I called my brother. I go, hey, can I crash at your place?
Yeah.
And he goes, you need to pay $250 a month in rent for like a room.
And so you knew you had to go make some
So I
money.
was like, okay, now I need to like step up and make at least enough to pay that.
Right.
So it was a great gift that he gave me and my sister by like kicking me out and forcing me to think in a different way. And now my back's against the wall. It's like, okay, I've got to take some action.
So now when you're taking some action, you obviously didn't want to do the job. I had a very similar experience where I decided, hey, screw it, I'm going to go open up a gym.
Uh-huh.
But for you, you're like, hey, I don't want to go down that path. I like what I'm doing. I like meeting people. I'm good at this.
Networking.
But now how do I make the money from it? So now when you were pursuing
Yeah.
money, what was the first thought in your brain? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I imagine you said something like this, like, well, you know, how can I get somebody so much value that they're willing to pay for it, right? Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's ROI for these people. So were you thinking,
I didn't know that first. I was just like, how do
I'm just going to charge and see if people show up?
Well, originally I did like a free event. I was like, let's see if anyone shows up.
Right.
And I sold sponsorship tables for the event and I made like $1,000.
Yep.
And then I was like, there was 350 people here. Like they loved it. Like I didn't know people would love it that much. And they kept thanking me for like bringing everyone together and the quality of people that was there. And I was like, maybe I'll do another one and I'll charge $5.
Right.
And I was terrified. I was like, I don't think anyone's going to show. And then I made $1,500 just at the door and from like people showing up. And then I made another $1,000 or $1,200 from sponsorship tables. And I was like, so I can do another event like this and charge people $5 and they'll show up still. And it was like more qualified people.
Right.
And I can sell sponsorships to the businesses. And I was like, what if I charge $10? Would people still show?
See what's possible.
And I did that. And I was like, oh, wow, this is interesting. And I was like, I'm building a relationship with these venues that I was hosting them at. And I was bringing them 300, 400, 500 people on their worst nights.
And how often would you do these? Like once a month?
Once a month.
So how long did you do that for?
I did it for like 9 or 10 months. And I did almost 20 events.
And then what was the moment? So you're off the couch,
Mm-hmm.
you're paying the $250 to your brother, you're doing these events, you're starting to make some money,
Yeah,
right?
some money.
And then what was the next catapult?
Well, I mean, I think I was just like realizing, wow, I'm actually decent at this, bringing people together,
Sure.
like facilitating, curating, and bridging the gap. Because I would talk to everyone that walked through the door and say, what's your biggest challenge?
Yeah.
And then be like, man, I'm really struggling. We're looking for like an IT guy right now. We're
And
looking
you
for
find somebody who's
we're
doing
looking
IT.
for a head of marketing. We're looking for a business development.
Yep.
And then that next person would walk in and like,
Right.
what's your skill and what is your challenge? Well, I'm looking for a job and I'm a head of marketing guy.
Perfect.
Oh, you got to go meet so-and-so. And I
Yep.
just became the matchmaker.
Yep.
And that was like my role. It was just like connecting the dots for people. And I said, people started asking me like, how are you doing this on LinkedIn? How are you like getting all these people to show up for these events and promoting it? And your profile looks amazing. And they were like, can you help me on my profile?
And then you started.
So I started teaching
Yep.
like LinkedIn, profile makeovers, and I was charging $100, then $200, then $300. I remember being like, wow, there's like something in here, just like teaching people how to do this.
And at that time, did you still enjoy what you were doing?
Yeah, I loved it at that point. I was like, this is amazing.
So you were going
Because
down
I was
this
the guy.
path.
I was like
You
the
were
top guy in the
you're
world.
like the,
Like people went to me when they wanted to learn about LinkedIn because I was writing about it. I was hosting events. I was talking about it. I was helping people. And I was branding myself. I started researching online about personal branding. And I started branding myself as like the LinkedIn guy.
So how did you pivot from LinkedIn guy?
Yeah.
What I think is really interesting is for those people who come out of a professional sport, those people who come out of a career they don't like, and you're an example of someone who identified something that you had some skills at, obviously, right? And you found your passion. You kept boom, 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 boom. Took you a couple of years though. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
But now, how did you make that shift from
Then
LinkedIn
I lost.
dude?
Yeah, then I lost my passion because I was like,
You were over it.
I was like, I'm sick and tired of like my life is not supposed to be teaching people how to upload a photo on their LinkedIn profile.
Huh.
That wasn't like my life's mission.
Yeah.
But for a couple of years, it was a mission. It was like, man, I could help a lot of people. But then I got over it, just like maybe you got over CrossFit at one point, or
Yeah.
I don't know.
Whatever. Yeah.
But people, we decide we don't love things anymore, and that's fine. And so it was that moment I was like, I don't want to be known as this anymore. How do I break through into another industry or another like
But using
positioning?
the same skill set, I imagine, because like
Yeah.
not to put like to share with you, like I've accomplished a lot in CrossFit, but I don't want to be defined as that. Like we have a large business, and I'm really passionate about the sport of business, and I love being an entrepreneur and being business, and that's what I want to kind of ship. Like I
Mhm.
want to have this as my background, and this is my
Yeah,
foundation, but I don't only want to be defined that way. And I
absolutely.
think that's interesting for you to say because like you didn't want to only be defined as a football player, for example,
Right.
right? Now you didn't want to just be the LinkedIn guy.
Yep. And then I got into, then I did this webinar where I was like teaching LinkedIn on a bigger scale. So as
Yep.
opposed to doing one-on-one stuff, someone invited me to do like a
Scaling.
webinar, which it was like 600 people on live. And I was like, oh, I could do this like one to many, not just one to one. And I made $6,200 in an hour teaching this like LinkedIn webinar and offering a product that I didn't even have yet. I just said, hey guys, I'm going to create this program on LinkedIn. If you guys are interested, like sign up here and I'll deliver it in a few weeks. And a bunch of people bought. And I was like, wow, this is more money than I've made in the last like 3-4 months combined. And I was like, I am the richest man in the world. I was freaking out.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And I remember being like, I was like, I'm going all in on doing webinars and teaching LinkedIn on webinars to a mass audience. So I was doing webinars every single week for the next couple of years. And I was doing it just on LinkedIn, teaching broadly to people. And then more people said, man, I loved your LinkedIn training. Can you teach me about Facebook?
Yeah.
Can you teach me about Twitter? Can you teach me about this? My business is struggling. Can you help me here? So I just started diving in and learning these other platforms and then teaching that on these webinars.
Yeah. And using the network you had already created.
That's it. I built this large audience from LinkedIn and these LinkedIn networking events. I got everyone's email address, so I just promote them my trainings. And after about a year to a year and a half of doing that, so many people were like, man, you're just selling so many these programs. Like, how are you selling these programs? And I was like, I'm using webinars. And then everyone started coming to me and say, can you teach me how to use webinars to sell my products, my services, my events, my books?
So you became the webinar guy.
So I was like, I'm now going to become the webinar guy because I love this process of like teaching people how to get their message out there
But to a mass audience.
to a mass audience,
Well,
not
and
one-on-one.
you've done that actually, not to switch gears to your podcast,
Yeah.
but that's
Yep.
really what you've done on your podcast.
That's it.
You've taken a digital format, right?
Yep.
Your network, because really I'm looking at a wall full of celebrities and I'm saying, man, your network is vast and you're
Yes.
taking that network, you're creating content, you're trying to add value for people.
To the masses.
And in the return, it leads to a bunch of good stuff for you. And that's
Absolutely.
really what you've been able to create over the last 10 years.
That's it, man. I'm just kind of redoing the same format in different industries and ways. And the webinar thing was massive for me. Like I still use webinars today, but I became known. I like wrote a book about webinars. I was teaching it. I had a course on it, like, because everyone came to me and said, can you teach me how to do it? Just like they did on LinkedIn. They were like, can you teach me how to do this?
Right. There was a demand coming and you just wanted to service it.
And I loved doing it for about 3-4 years, teaching it until I stopped loving it. I was like, if I have to teach one more person about webinars, like I'm going to shoot myself in the face. Right. So it's like,
Yeah.
it was the same thing with
the
LinkedIn on a different level. Like I did it because I loved it until I didn't love it anymore.
So I want to ask you about that.
And then-
Signs did you have about that? Like what's like the
when I was like dreading getting on a webinar,
right?
I was like, and talking about it, I was like, it
so at
doesn't
that
excite
point,
me
the money,
anymore.
the money was
Making
irrelevant.
a ton of money,
right?
And I was just like, 20 grand in a day. I was like, I'd rather not do this.
Right.
I was like,
And that's when you knew at that moment when you're making 20, 30, whatever grand, and you still weren't interested in it.
I was like,
You knew you had to pivot. You knew you had to
I
switch.
knew I was like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. It's not all about money. It's about fulfillment too. And doing something that you at least enjoy. Because if you're not doing something you enjoy, I'm not saying it's always going to be easy and fun, but like doing things that you enjoy in general is the path. And so I was like, I'd saved a ton of money. I was making a lot of money, but it wasn't exciting me to the levels. It wasn't my vision long term to be the webinar guy or the LinkedIn guy or the former pro football guy. I was like, what do I really want? I turned about 29 years old and I'd sold this business with like this webinar training stuff and all these courses. I'd sold it to my business partner. So I had a bunch of money saved up and I was like, what do I really want? Like I'm almost 30. What do I want my life to be about? I was just reflecting on this. And I said, really, the thing I love doing is connecting with people. And I was reflecting back like on my LinkedIn days. Early on, I just reached out to people one-on-one on LinkedIn and interviewed them. I just didn't record it. I was reaching out to the CEOs of all the local businesses and international businesses and just asking them about how they got to where they were.
Yeah, I remember you actually saying that in an interview I was listening
Yeah.
to. You would email them,
That's
engage
it.
them, but you were just asking them, "Hey, can you just
I'm
talk to me about,
inspired by your story.
I'm inspired by your story."
I didn't ask for them for advice. I was just like, I think it's amazing what you've done.
Well, and I'm sitting here, across the table from you saying, "I'm inspired by what you've done.
Yeah.
Tell me how you got there,"
That's
right?
it.
And we're
That's
still having
it.
this conversation, but I think that's a much better way of saying that than, "Hey,
Give me advice.
give me
Yeah.
like or whatever,"
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
people, and this actually piggybacks perfectly into this conversation. You get hit up, I'm sure, every single day.
Uh-huh.
I get hit up pretty often for, different people are always looking for something, right?
Uh-huh.
So how do you gauge like what
When
you're,
to say yes to? Or
yeah, what to say yes to? When are you fired up about it? Like,
it's
like
a feeling.
it's a feeling, right? Because
Yeah.
I look at your business, right? LinkedIn to webinars to where you're at today,
Podcast.
right?
Yeah.
And so it sounds to me like where your real passion lies is in the network, in communication like this, in the podcast, which leads you to books and talk shows and all these
Yeah.
different things, right?
Yeah.
But when do you know, like, is it just something like your gut tells you? How does that work?
Well, I think it all depends. Like when someone wants to come on my podcast, I'll just speak from that point of view. I think of my audience first. I think of, okay, is my audience going to be interested in this person? You can find interest in any person, right? But it's like for the positioning of my brand and the School of Greatness and where it's heading, where we bring on the most interesting people in the world in the field that they have, is this relevant to my audience, what they're going to want to listen to? Yes, there's like moms of 3 kids that are single moms that have passionate stories, but that's not what this is for.
Sure.
So the context of like what the show is for, is this person good for my audience? And am I interested in them? There's lots of like celebrities and famous people that want to come on that I'm just not interested in.
Sure.
And again, I need to be interested in the person for it to be interesting. So I either need to rally behind getting interested in them, or how good they're going to be for my audience needs to trump that. But if they're going to be good for my audience, I'm usually really interested in it.
Well, I think that's really interesting. So before we sat down and started recording, I said to you, I said, dude, like, what do you want to talk about? And you said something to me that I'm going to remember forever, where you're just like, well, what are you interested in? And I'm asking the things I'm interested in because I'm really curious about it.
And that's going to make it a better interview.
Right. Because I'm genuinely interested in how you got from where you're at to where you are today. And I think that's really intriguing to me, that the way you basically determine if you want someone on your show, to start with there, aside from all the other things do networking wise, is, do they interest me? Is there a piece of their life? Like, for example, you might have some rock star that's super famous, but you just might not align with their core values.
That's it, man.
Maybe they do certain things you just don't really care about.
Yeah, exactly. And I won't have them on. And people will be like, oh, I can't believe you didn't have them on, but you had this person on. It's like, I've got to be interested. And that's for like having someone on my show. Now to go on someone else's show, I'm getting pitched all the time. And I really think of like, and my team is telling me to say no, like more and more to doing other interviews. Cause I did 2 interviews today, and to add another thing is like, it's a lot of energy for me.
Yeah.
And so I'll say yes to like the GMAs, like the Today shows, like all the bigger shows when it makes sense. Obviously I'll say yes to all those, but just like other shows that are starting out or something, even sometimes when it's like good friends, I'm like, someone asked me actually yesterday, he's like, hey, I'm launching a podcast and can I use like 15 minutes of your time? I've got Gary Vee coming on, this and that. And I'm like, I want to say no. I was kind of like, hey, can we push it off in like a few months? Cause I'm just so focused right now.
Because it's your energy. So
it's a lot of energy. Even 10, 15 minutes is a lot of time.
So from where you were to where you're at now, where is your energy? Because I've realized that with myself, right? You only have so much energy, time in the day, and you need to spend it how you want to spend it, with your girlfriend, making your bed,
working
right?
out,
working out,
eating the right way,
And so you only have so much energy. What is Lewis Howe's energy focused on right now, and why? Right?
It's focused on the greatest level of impact that I can make. For me, Why that? Because if I die tomorrow, I want to know that at least I gave my best effort to impact as many people as possible. That's just my measure of the meaning of my life. Because I know like I don't want to regret not giving my full effort and impacting as many people as possible, or at least curating the conversations, creating the content, the programs, the products, the events where people can experience them forever, essentially, or for as long as they're available without me here. And I don't want to live saying I could have done all these things, but I didn't do them. So that's why. And I want to put as much energy and focus on my podcast show as possible because that's what I have the most control over. I don't have control over Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or a talk show on Facebook or these other platforms that I might partner with because they have ownership on those things as well. This show that I have is a way that I can semi-control reaching as many people as possible. So my goal is to put as much effort and energy into each interview saying, is this better than the previous episode? Is the caliber of person better or different in some way? Is my energy better than previously? Did we create an experience that people are going to remember? It's going to impact them in some way, whether it's a moment that shifts something or it's the whole thing. And are they going to want to share it with at least one friend to help impact their life? For me, that's what I think about. I obsess over it being so good that people have to share it with a friend.
And when you talk about impact, to summarize what you believe is impact, right? Affect people's life. What are you
help people improve their life
in any way? Whether it be getting them off the couch and doing some walking, making their bed in the morning,
relationships,
getting off, stop
everything.
Drinking as much, whatever it may be. So you touch base on all these things. And so, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I want to kind of summarize what I've heard. Like you go from a guy who's just dedicated to football, you run into a barricade, and it was probably some of the hardest times of your life, right?
Yeah.
And from there, with grit, determination, and probably consistency, right? You stayed in a similar vertical for a
few years, and then I did another vertical for a few years.
But it was one of the same, right?
Yeah,
because
same
it was
thing.
still
Same thing.
I think about it for me, like we're still like even if we're doing corporate wellness or regular, we're still in the
teaching,
fitness space.
helping.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you stayed like consistent to your craft now for 15 years?
10 years. Yeah.
10 years. And you've gone now from, being on the couch and doing LinkedIn throwdowns to now, having your own show on the Facebook, being on
Ellen's couch. Yeah.
Yeah. Being on Ellen's couch. That's a good way to put it. And so I think when you talk about making an impact, I imagine, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I imagine the guy who could have played football, right? Or the guy who's playing football. If you had just said yes to another contract, I highly doubt.
I wouldn't be here.
You wouldn't be here.
Wouldn't be here.
And
man.
so if your life goal was to make an impact, if that was originally your goal playing football, right? I mean, seems to me like you're making a much bigger impact than you would have.
Nice, man. I'm very grateful for the injuries. Like as I reflect back, it's like I wouldn't want it any other way because I don't know what else I'd be doing right now. Even if someone was like, "Hey, I'll give you $100 million for like your brand and your business."
Yeah.
If I sold it, I'd just be like, "Okay, I'm going to keep doing the same thing. I'm going to like recreate the same thing." Or I don't know. Or maybe I would do content in different ways. I'd like make more documentaries or something like that. But it's like I'd be doing the same thing.
Better cameras.
I'd want to impact people's lives and give people the tools, inspiration, and stories to improve their life. I feel like for me, that's the greatest level of fulfillment. I'm sure for you love when someone is a new member at your gym and you see all the challenges they're faced with early on, and then you see them 6 months later, lighter, happier, fitter, like better relationships, better connection with their kids. And you're like, man, that's because of what we created in this gym facility experience, that this person's life is better.
And that's what you want.
There's no greater feeling.
No, there isn't.
Like you can make all the money in the world, but it's like when you know that you made an impact on someone's life, for me, that's the greatest addiction. Like we're all addicted to something in life. Some of us might be sex, some of them might be drugs, alcohol, fitness. Like we're all addicted to something. And I think the greatest addiction, if we're all going to have something, is to improve our life and someone else's life.
And they could do that in a number of ways. So
yeah,
if you don't have the platform that Lewis Howes has, you could either start tomorrow by working to create a network.
It's one person at a time.
It's one person at a time, like you did, right? I mean, I'm sitting across from a guy 10 years ago who was talking to one person too.
I had no audience at one point.
And you start with an audience and you could build up to millions. right? But even if you
You don't
don't
even
get to
need that.
millions, even if you get to 5, right, you can still make an impact on somebody. And I think that's where you and I align so much, right?
Yeah.
Is that I I truly agree with what you just said, and I hope that for anybody listening, they just take a step back for a second, and realize like whatever job you're in, whatever career path you've chosen, that's fine, right? But there's always ways you can make an impact on something, and that's
Yeah.
sharing information, that's educating people, that's inspiring others, tons of different ways.
Yeah. And it can be just with your own family. It doesn't have to be like millions of people. That's just the route that I've chosen
Right,
because it brings me more fulfillment.
right,
But if, less people were listening, I wouldn't be hurt. I'd still be focused on the people that I am transforming or supporting in their growth. And that's what I focus on. Like, I could compare myself to people with way bigger audiences than me and be like, oh, I wish I
Yeah.
had this reach.
Right.
And I've done that at times. But then like I'll have my event or I'll speak somewhere, I'll just see someone down the street and they'll tell me their story about how they heard an episode with Jason Khalipa and how it's like it inspired them to like start working out every single day for 20 minutes and how they've improved their confidence and how this and the snowball effect. And I'm like, gosh, I'm glad I showed up that day for this person.
right.
And for me, it's like it gives me more meaning and fulfillment. So I focus on the people's lives that I am impacting and helping, as opposed to what I don't have yet, or where I'm and trying to compare myself to other people, because that is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And unfulfillment is just being like, well, it's still not where I want it to be. It's not where I want it to be. For me, it's never going to be where I envision it being. If so, then I'm going to start slowly declining. If it's like, well, that's where I want it to be and now I'm done. Like I'm always going to want to grow myself, and also going to be very grateful for where I'm at and appreciate what I've created. Because there's some people who it's never enough and they never feel enough inside. And that's not a good place to be at.
Right.
Like always going for the next thing. I did that for a long time. It's being grateful, joyful, happy, and satisfied where you're at right now. And also saying, yeah, there's still more work to be done.
Well, it's almost like every night you should sit there and say 3 things that you're grateful for that day.
That's it.
And that might be able to help.
It might be able to help you. Like, yes, and I can't wait for tomorrow. Like, I'm
Yeah.
grateful for what we did today. We did a great job, and we gave everything we got. Let's go out there and do it again tomorrow. But be appreciative, not like constantly saying, well, it's not enough yet. I'm still not doing what I want to do. It's like when you get there, it's still not going to be enough.
Right. I couldn't agree with you more, man. I've had those moments in my life, and you got to take a step back and be grateful for what
It's
you
like
have.
you win the CrossFit Games and you say, oh, I could have been better though.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the point of doing this then?
Right.
Like, yes, appreciate that you won and take some time to appreciate it and then start reflecting on new goals. But don't beat yourself up that you didn't do everything you wanted to do.
Well, Lewis, we really appreciate your time. For anybody who's interested in, I mean, dude, you got books out. You're pretty active on Instagram, Twitter.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
Lewis Howes anywhere online and School of Greatness podcast.
So for great content, you got to check out Kobe's interview.
Yeah,
was great.
check that one out. Yeah, it's fun.
I really, really appreciate you taking the time today. And I look forward to watching you put out more books, keep dominating the space, and making a bigger impact.
Appreciate you, brother.
All right, man.
Thanks, man.